Welcome back to the Nick Halaris Show. Our guest today is Matt Murphy, a former Green Beret and the president of the Sentinel Foundation. Matt, welcome to the show.
Nick, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and we got a lot to cover. Most of it's pretty dark, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I heard you first. Your name first came across my desk as I was listening to a podcast to prepare for having another guest, Nick Halaris, on my show. And so I listened to your conversation with him. And ever since I heard that talk, I was like, you know what? I have to meet Matt. I have to have him on the show. What you do is dark, but it's incredibly important. And in another sense, it's kind of fascinating. People, for whatever reason, they're interested in this. I mentioned it earlier that I've sort of previewed this episode with my close friends, and everyone's like, wow, that is incredible. And I can't wait to hear the story. So I thought maybe a good place to start is just tell us, what is Sentinel Foundation and what are you all doing?
Oh, man. Well, Sentinel Foundation was founded back in 2016 by Jameson Gilvani and Glenn Devitt. I always mess up Jameson's name. He hates it every time, but I keep doing it on purpose. Anyways, tangent. So Glenn and Jameson came together to start Sentinel, to start saving children from child sex trafficking, which is a real crucial point of what we do that's different than a lot of other organizations, and then child exploitation. That started because Glenn Devitt was a hacker and basically intel support for JSOC, which is the highest level of counterterror that we have in the U.S. government. So we support the unit, or commonly known as Delta Force. And he got injured. There's this program where guys can transition out of the military if they meet certain qualifications and go through a digital forensic internship with the Department of Homeland Security. So it's a year long. And the digital forensics means you're, basically forensically examining hard drives, computers, anything digital that contains data. So images, videos, communications, all of that. And you're trying to find evidence. Well, the unfortunate part about this job is that they're the ones that look at the child sexual abuse material. And so when these, not as much traffickers usually, but mostly pedophiles and people who have sexually abused children, they collect images and videos, from the dark web and the internet. And it's like a hoarding of just the most horrible graphic stuff you could ever imagine. A lot of these guys will have terabytes of content that has to be gone through by a forensic examiner, and they have to watch and look at every picture and video. Now, could you imagine mentally what that would do to you? Not to go on a tangent, but the first digital forensic technician we had at a task force that I started here in Nashville, Tennessee, committed suicide a few months after the job. He started the job. It's a dark, heavy job. And they found military guys usually have the best build up or mindset, psychology profile to be able to succeed in it. But at the end of this year internship of doing this, you get to say, hey, not for me, I'm out, or I'm going to keep doing it. Glenn said, not for me, I'm out. This is mentally destroying me, but I want to stay in this fight. I just can't do this fight this way, right? I couldn't do it either. There's no way. So Glenn started working with a bunch of different people, OUR, and, with Tim Ballard and a few other people at the beginning of UR, and he was their main intel guy. And he decided to part ways with Tim and Paul Hutchison and do his own thing shortly after working there. And that led him to start Sentinel Foundation. So Sentinel Foundation has been fighting human trafficking, child exploitation around the globe, and responding to humanitarian crisis and just any type of situation that happens within a Christian network across the world, from missionaries to orphanages, churches, anything that requires a special operations level of assistance, right? And that caliber of men. So they've been doing that since 2016. A couple foundations and family offices supported Sentinel. They just paid for everything, right? So Sentinel never publicly fundraised. They didn't talk about their mission, any of that stuff. Well, as Sentinel grew under this, with capability, technology, and talent, it got to the point where this past summer where it was like, hey, we've got to go public. We've got to start fundraising at scale because we have to grow this mission at scale. I'm not saying this like everybody says this. We literally do have the best team in the world at this job, from Delta Force operators, Green Berets, former law enforcement from Homeland Security, the investigative expertise. We have the best hacker in the world on the team, Ryan Montgomery. We have the best of the best on the Sentinel Foundation team for this, but we have to scale that. We have to grow it, and that takes a lot more money than the foundations, the family offices alone, could give us. So I came onto the team this past summer, and now we're building out the domestic mission. So we have a couple states that we're hopefully soon to be launching in the next 4 to 6 months, launching statewide task forces in. Florida should be launching first. Hopefully we can get something started by May. DeSantis gave us a thumbs up to do it in a press conference last week. We've been in meetings for months, but very excited about that, man. So we'll be supporting the state of Florida with high-level tech, intel work, software, and all the resources and things that they just don't have, and the talent that they don't have in the state to be able to make sense of this and start saving kids. So we accomplished this whole mission internationally and domestically. And my whole sole focus as the president of Sentinel is to build out our domestic mission.
Nice.
And man, it's a lot of people saw Sound of Freedom, right, and saw that there's a huge issue, with sex trafficking overseas, but unfortunately, the U.S. is the number one consumer of this. We have the money, so we have the ability to, and the things that are happening here in the U.S. and that people here in the U.S. are doing to children all over the globe is absolutely horrific.
Yeah, I wanna zoom out for a second. Mm-hmm. And just try to understand the scope of the problem. I think I heard on some of your other podcast appearances that the numbers are staggering. Like I might get this wrong, but I vaguely remember something like 40,000 unaccounted for children in America at any moment or something like that. And then internationally, it has to be order of magnitudes. But what are the numbers?
Well, so right now in the U.S., now there's multiple other reasons for this number, from runaways to kidnappings to, parental disputes over custody and stuff. Somewhere between 400 to 800,000 kids go missing, American kids, every year, right? So there's a lot of different reasons for that, but sex trafficking, children who are being groomed and exploited make up a big number of that. That's on. So you can't really put a percentage on that trafficking side because it happens at so many different levels. You have familial trafficking where the mom or dad is the one trafficking the child. You have, drug addiction that causes the person to be trafficked. And then you also have people who are kidnapped and into the underworld. But that is usually the exception, not the norm for how human trafficking happens, right? Everyone's scared their kid's going to get snatched by this white van, right? Off the side of the street and never seen again. Although that does happen, you have better odds of getting hit by lightning. So the other main issue here in the U.S., two main issues is child exploitation and extortion. We can put those together, and then this immigrant crisis that we're experiencing. So the immigrant crisis is a whole nother issue that's always been around for human trafficking, because if someone's brought into this country that's undocumented, they're not quote unquote missing, no one's looking for them, no one knows who they are, they don't have an ID, they're probably part of some catch and release thing into the United States, or they're smuggled into the United States. No one's looking for them. So no one knows that there's children here being trafficked and sold for sex and moved all over the country and then disposed of when they're done with them. The next level is child exploitation. So what have all of us given our children within the past decade? Really since, I would say, 2007 is when the iPhone came out. But it became kind of standard practice to start handing your toddler an iPhone to watch YouTube videos, to do things on. And now, you see 3-year-olds, they can navigate an iPhone on their own, right? Because parents are just giving them technology. Well, the iPhone is the most dangerous device that's ever been held in the human hand. And it's also the most powerful, I wouldn't say freedom device we've ever had, but it gives us access to things we've never had access to before, right? So with all the good, with the exceptional amount of good comes an exceptional amount of bad. So when you hand a child a phone, you give your child access to the world, right? You give them access to all knowledge, right? You give them access to artificial intelligence and algorithms, and you give them access to things that their little brain is not mature enough or ready for or can't even comprehend. You're just allowing that to fall right into their lap. What do kids do? Kids are kids. They're going to look at the stuff they shouldn't. They're going to Google things. They're going to search things. They're going to end up in places they should never be. Kids these days together play video games on their phones together. They communicate and text each other together on their phones, right? Growing up and developing relationships and interests and their sexuality online. right? Well, if it was just kids with other kids developing their sexuality, their relationships, and their growth pattern, maybe this wouldn't be as bad. But it's not just other kids. It's artificial intelligence. It's algorithms. It's adults. There's predators. You have no idea what's after your children. Here's what's happening to these children. The younger they get sexualized, the more open they are to being groomed. And more open they are to sexual advances by men and people and random people online, because there's no more red flag, stranger danger. Why does this guy want to see a picture of my vaginas anymore? It's all, this is totally normal. They're teaching me about this at school. This is happening online. I'm seeing videos. I'm seeing shows. So anyways, now it's free reign if you're a pedophile, a groomer, or a predator. Free reign. Because now you have access to these kids, from Roblox, all these video games, all these chat applications, to social media, to all these other applications that parents don't even know exist. All right. So it is literally like shooting fish in a barrel, right, for our children now, because of what we're doing to them by allowing them to have this untethered, unsupervised access to the phone. We found a 6-year-old girl. One of the first charitable organization I started does task forces in a different way than I do now. But they found a 6-year-old girl in Florida who had sent pictures of her breast and her private parts to a man in Texas. 6-year-old girl. Guess how long she had had a phone in her hand for? 2 days.
2 days. Wow.
Her parents had given her a phone for 2 days, and she had already been approached by a predator. And that quickly, because there was no red flags and because of all the other things that are happening in her life to make her not scared of that, she had sent pictures of her undeveloped breasts and her, undeveloped lady parts to a guy in Texas, 6 years old. Had a phone for 2 days. I think it was over 50 images by the time the parents caught on. When the cops caught this guy in Texas, this guy had done the same thing to over 800 children. One guy. Now imagine as a child the damage to the development, the brain, and everything else that's happened. One guy was able to do that to 800 kids. This is happening every day in America.
Yeah, the numbers sound. Yeah, it sounds staggering. I mean, back to the beginning of the answer that you gave, which is fascinating. There's a lot of points to follow up, but there's hundreds of thousands of people who are getting in some kind of trouble at any moment in America, right? It sounds like, based on. Do you have numbers? You mentioned several different categories, right? Like I sort of remember the one as a kid, because we probably grew up like roughly the same time. It was don't go into the van with no windows. Like, do we have numbers though on the number of instances that happens versus somebody being taken advantage of online? Is there any data on that?
We don't. We definitely have online. But when it comes to in the physical world, it's really our children are not at a lot of threat. They're more at threat to be groomed and run away. And I'm going to get to that part. But the being taken, kidnapped stuff is so rare. Like I said, if somebody did the numbers, you have a better chance to get hit by lightning than actually be kidnapped by a person in a van. The kidnapping and the trafficking of our children is an exception, not the norm. Now, the trafficking of other children into this country to be sexually abused by Americans is out of control. Out of control. But no one hears about it. And everybody says, this can't be real. This can't be real. It's literally happening in every state and every city in this country because there's money in it, because men pay for it. Every online sting, we post an ad and pretend to be a little girl, a little boy, 20, 30, 40, 50 guys in one night. And everybody's like, how can there be this many guys? Well, it's because most of the time they show up, it's an actual kid. Right? The media won't talk about it. It's just, public won't address it. And because it's in the underworld, you never hear of, because this little girl's not missing. No one's looking for her. She's here. She's being raped. This little boy, he's here. He's being raped daily, all day. They're being trafficked. They're being sold, but no one gives a shit because, one, they don't know. And then two, they'll never see it. And they're being raped and picked up by, I'll tell you the lineup: lawyers, doctors, pastors, teachers, cops, you name it. All of these types of people are the ones that get picked up in these stings, which means every level of society is participating in this. Because pedophilia and this perversion, it doesn't know an income bracket. It doesn't know a race, even though in incestual family pedophilia is mostly white males. But the other type where they're going to pay to have kids, it doesn't know a race. It doesn't know, a social class. It's not just the poor men doing it. It's the wealthy men doing it. It's the wealthy men doing it more because they have the money to, right? So that's the trafficking side. But on this exploitation side, what these people are doing, it goes two paths. You have the child exploitation where they contact the kid and start to groom them. Now, there is a manual that is shared online. It is shared millions of times a year on torrent sites. Forget how many pages. I think it's around 70. I got to double check that one. 70 pages, and it walks a predator through how to find a kid, what platforms to use, where's the place to go, how you should behave. Should you pretend be a boy or a girl, how you should talk to the child. It walks them through the textbook psychological manipulation of how to groom a child and the vulnerabilities and the type of kids they're looking for. They're not looking for poor kids. They're looking for kids whose parents are detached, the kids that might be mad at that time with their mom or dad, or, mom and dad are too controlling or too whatever. They find any way they can to start to develop a conversation or a relationship with that child. So you could be sitting in this room and your child could be sitting on the couch getting groomed by a predator. So once this manual walks them through the grooming process, then it walks them into how I can run away, right? Because there's a lot of ways to get this child to run away. And the runaway clause is the biggest loophole that these predators use. It's that if a child runs away and they can't find any proof or any evidence, right, that this child is in danger, then it's on the family to go find them. Private investigator, drive around the neighborhood, post things up. If the child's in danger, then law enforcement will help, right? But that's really, hard to prove because also these predators in this manual are taught how to hide the conversation, how to meet the child on one application, but then get the child to move to another application so they can communicate. They teach the child how to delete the conversation. They teach the child that, hey, this is our secret relationship. This is our secret friendship. No one can know. You can't tell anybody. So they find out they'll ruin this for us. They'll destroy us, And then they get the kid to send images and videos and all kinds of things. Right. So that's child exploitation. That's grooming. Right. And a lot of times it gets to the point to where they physically want to get with the kid. Well, lucky for these evil people, the manual walks them through how to physically touch the kid based on the child's age and how to pleasure a child and when they're old enough and ready for a penis or when they're not ready for a penis or what to do if they're toddlers or what to do with or whatever, because they literally do. The most popular category of child sexual abuse in the United States of America is toddlers. Toddlers. Fucking toddlers, man.
Yeah. That's
most popular category. So this is the truth of what's happening here in the United States. The largest dark web pedophile board with millions of members who had to create imageries and videos with a child to join. So millions of guys that had to create images and videos with a toddler to join to be a part of this group, millions of users, was ran by a guy in Franklin, Tennessee, considered the richest city, county, and safest neighborhood in the United States of America. He was sitting in that neighborhood running this board.
And that was like the admission price. You had to just prove that you were a bad guy.
That you're a pedophile.
Yeah.
To prove you're right. So you're not. How are you not a cop? Well, send us a video. You molested a kid, raping a kid. They do it from babies to toddlers to you name it. And there's millions of these people. And these boards are all over the dark web. So we'll talk about how we're going to fight that in a minute. But so then the other thing that's becoming very prevalent is sexual extortion, because these guys can do this to girls and boys. Boys are usually more susceptible in their teenage years of being victims of extortion. So they'll pretend to be this hot chick, this pretty girl. They'll create a Facebook profile, Instagram profile, TikTok. They're obviously stealing images and stuff from other profiles and things they have access to. And they'll pretend to be a love interest, and then they'll start to develop this sexual relationship online with the boy. This happens to girls too, but I'd say 70% of the time it's boys, teenage boys, all that testosterone, all that hormones, and just wanting to, get their hands on anything they can are the ones who are victims to this. They'll get the boy to then start playing with himself and masturbating on camera, right, to send to the girl that's also already sent videos to get him to do it, right? And then the second they get videos and compromising stuff of the boy, boom, the extortion starts. They start to make the threats. Hey, if you don't get, $10,000 transferred in this account right now, I'm going to send this video to everyone in your school, everyone on your friend list. Your parents are going to get it. We're going to ruin your life. And then they'll start to make even sometimes threats to the parents too if they don't pay. We're seeing a lot of suicides come out of this because of the hell they put these kids through. Sometimes they just get the kid hooked in the sense that now I got you. Now you're going to do and create whatever I tell you to do. And the second you stop, I'll destroy you. That's another tactic that they use. That's how they get all these compromising videos of young girls, is the same tactic to then use on the young boys. And you literally have criminal enterprises all over the world, the thousands of people sitting behind a computer all day, every day, doing this to kids in America. And then the next part of this is it's really where it gets to, I would say it all kind of comes to a head, if you will, is this hybrid thing that's kind of happening between human trafficking, between the internet, and then the underlying part of this is drugs. Right? We have an out of control issue with fentanyl and heroin and every other kind of drug in the country right now. I think fentanyl's killed more people than Vietnam in the past few years. It's every family has been affected by it, myself included. So that is another way that these traffickers can then start to, bring people out. So they can meet people online. They can promise them things. Another issue that we see a lot with this is girls are brought in from other countries that aren't necessarily young kids, but they're young, maybe 15, 16, 17 years old. They're close enough. Their identities are changed. Say they're 18 or whatever. And then they're brought in to create OnlyFans accounts. And then they get raped over and over again all day long by a guy, but they're posting, they're being kind of held hostage saying, I'm this OnlyFans girl and, being sexy and all this kind of stuff. But the guys having sex with her is actually raping her, and they're posting these videos and selling them on OnlyFans. That's becoming a really big market, especially because the borders are wide open right now. Any kind of crime you can think of is coming across that border, from terrorism to criminal organizations, cartel issues, human trafficking, child trafficking, drugs, of course. I mean, it's Pandora's box of what's coming across that border. So we're just finding new and inventive and evil, sadistic ways that they are taking advantage of Americans or taking advantage of the other people almost every day.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, I want to follow up real quick on one of the points on trafficking, on the trafficking front, that the U.S. is a big part of the problem because there's so much consumption. It's not so much that the kids are American kids, yes, but the trafficking is coming into this country because there's this, whatever, to use an economic term. I hate to use economics for this, but there's like a demand here for this crap. That's bigger than anywhere else, it sounds like.
It is. We are the number one consumer. Well, the issue is we have money. Even the poorest people in America are doing well compared to a lot of other places in the world, right? So with money and the internet comes corruption. Because of the internet, you can sit in the comfort of your own home and commit almost any crime imaginable other than physically hurting someone. But, let me take that back. Through the internet, you can get someone physically hurt if you pay enough money. Right. One of the most popular new things that we're seeing is the streaming of online sexual abuse. So this is something that we're fighting and trying to assist with now is, we've got, I think there's 50, 60,000 that we know of leads on men in the United States that will use cryptocurrency or other types of money sending services to another third world country, usually Thailand, Philippines, name your country. And then at a child sex brothel in those countries, that child will get raped and the abuse will be proctored by the American for $20 at his computer. And that's one of the hardest ones we're having to fight now because those streams go up. They're only up for 30 minutes and then they're down, right?
Yeah. And you said 50 or 60,000 cases are your investigating?
Just that we know of. Users. And then these guys do this multiple times.
Right.
50 or 60,000 different IPs that are doing this. And there's probably hundreds of thousands by the time we get through unraveling it. The other thing that happens that Americans do, other than buying and paying for it and all the things here, Americans are the number one sexual tourists in the world. So guys from America will go on trips to all of these countries, usually kind of third world, second world countries, even first world when they just have their issues, and they'll go and they'll do business, whatever, and they're really going over there to have sex with children in child brothels, and then they come back home to their wife and kids. So we fight that as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is like a real, like you mentioned, this is a dark topic. It's sobering, and I appreciate you going there because I feel like there's knowledge of this problem, right? Because people pay attention, but I don't think, I certainly didn't understand the scope of it. Like, this is
Yes.
a massive problem. That
Well, the internet has made it out of control, and just the resurgence of crime. So I'll tell you why we are where we are. Here's the issue, and this is why people are like, well, charities used to just, take care of society. Like, charities used to be kind of the bump that people needed to get to the next level, or take care of, the widows, the orphans, the homeless children, feed people. That used to be the function of a charity, because everything else in society was working okay. Well, now our society is fractured. Our foster care system is falling apart. 70% of kids that go through foster care will be sexually abused or trafficked. 70% of kids in the foster care system. Can you imagine that? Child Protective Services, completely broken, underfunded, completely fractured. You've got kids sleeping in caseworkers' offices. I mean, God knows what happens to these kids. You have people who run trafficking rings in the foster care system that can't wait for the next kid to show up. There's little oversight, and they're trying to do the best they can to reform it, but there's just so many kids that no one wants, that no one knows what to do with them, right? Well, then on top of that, law enforcement across, we all know how the country and the media and everyone feels about law enforcement these days. And God bless these men and women in uniform. That's what Sentinel does. We are here to support the men and women in law enforcement and their fight to save our children, because they don't get support from anywhere else to do it. Law enforcement across the board right now, and this is for all crime, is underfunded, understaffed, undertrained, under-resourced, is lacking in tech. And if they have tech, they don't have the people to use it or the capability to. That's across the board, across the United States. So they're drowning in murders and rapes and robberies and carjackings. And you're seeing what's happening on social media around this country. Countries are literally destabilizing and falling apart, and cops aren't doing anything about it because they can't. A lot of times legally they can't. The policy won't let them. And there's zero interest in that community for police to even be involved in things. Well, what the hell are they going to do about saving kids in one of the most advanced trafficking crimes ran by criminal cartels that have trillions of dollars and have some of the most organized and structured networks and tunnel systems and move drugs and people you've ever seen? Our government can't keep up with the cartels. The cartel walks circles around us all day long. Then on top of that, if law enforcement, I got a call, this is about 4 or 5 months ago, from 4 detectives that were part of one of the largest police departments in the United States. I'm not going to say the city because I don't want to throw cops under the bus. I just want to give an example of what we're up against. They called us begging for help. These guys were on a child crimes task force. They were the only 4 detectives on that crimes task force in this city, which is one of the largest police departments in the country. They had received 9, and this is just one tip line that gets a little bit vetted and validated before the tip comes in. They received 950 tips of children being exploited or abused. They had no training. They had no idea how to run these cases. They had one piece of software that they did not know how to use, and they had 2 computers between the 4 detectives to investigate the most advanced technological crime that's happening in our world that is victimizing our children. Think about that. If you live in that city, your children are not safe, right? But even if they were trained, and even if they had all the software and had all the technology, 4 is not enough. If you took every law enforcement officer in the United States of America right now and you put them towards just fighting child exploitation alone, they would not be able to handle the caseload. Less than 1% of child exploitation cases in the United States of America are getting investigated right now. Less than 1%. This is a systemic destruction of our society. To me, it's almost a level of terrorism. Because if we destroy our children, and if our children get mentally destroyed, the public health crisis that's coming from the depression, the issues, the self-esteem, the suicide, and all the things that are happening in children on the internet and child exploitation and trafficking, we have no fucking future. And I'm sorry for saying that, but if we continue at the rate we're going, not doing anything as a society, we have no future. The federal government spends $40 billion a year. $40 billion a year to fight the war on drugs. $40 billion. I could buy a drug probably at 10, 15 houses in my neighborhood. Every party I'm at, there's drugs. Everywhere I go with friends, I don't go to those much anymore, but everywhere I go, there are drugs. They're everywhere. We have more people die from fentanyl than Vietnam in the past few years. Cocaine's everywhere, pot's everywhere, pills, prescriptions, everything is everywhere. And $40 billion is spent to fix that, fight that. And it's everywhere. $40.2 million is spent by the federal government to keep our kids safe. That's less than $1 million per state to keep our children safe. Nothing is happening. I can build a task force that can do a whole lot of awesome stuff with about $7.5–8 million. And that's in one region.
And is that like the annual cost of the task force?
That is the annual cost of the task force. We could probably cover the whole state with tech and support with that task force, but at least one main region would be really well policed and able to get to all the cases and keep up with all the online tips and keep up with all the things that are happening with our kids. That would be a good start.
Yeah. And these online tips, are they like concerned citizens who are like, hey, I think something's happening? Like what are they?
They're tips given by internet service providers. Anyone who wants to share, hey, all right, this should happen. Here it is. And this doesn't happen a lot because a lot of times these people don't dime themselves out.
Yeah. So Sentinel's approach, just kind of piecing together some of the stuff we talked about. It sounds like in the United States, the focus is on producing these task force units that work in conjunction with law enforcement and provide the sort of high-level intelligence operations that you learned as special forces.
Well, the operations system is what I build. So I am not a tech guy. I was a human intelligence guy. That's a whole other tangent. But I understand how to build and develop a intel cell. And that's pretty much what we're doing at Sentinel is we are acquiring all the best software in the world. We're creating the tech partnerships the government can't create. We are working with 3-letter agencies and other entities within the DoD for technology and capability and understanding. We are bringing the best of the best in. You don't come on our tech team to be a leader or developer unless you are one of the best at what you do. So we have the best hacker in the world. He hates it when I say that. Ryan Montgomery, or 0 days on the team. He's our chief technology officer. We have the best people. There is not an organization in the United States of America that has the capabilities that we have across the board. And that's not me just saying that, trying to raise money. That's just a fact. And you can test me on that. But outside of that, the model that we've built is with conjunction with law enforcement experts. The retired Department of Homeland Security Investigations agent who helped me build this framework for this new model has 36 years fighting human trafficking and child exploitation. Retired, and now she's the law enforcement director for Sentinel. Right? This isn't just a wazoo idea or something that we hope works. This will work. So, and law enforcement knows they need the help because of all the issues I've already identified: underfunded, understaffed, under-resourced, undertrained, lacking technology, the ability to use it. Tech costs millions of dollars. Cloud storage costs millions of dollars. These systems, the development of this software and these systems that can be able to make sense of all the data and all the things they have that they're missing, millions of dollars. Paying intel analysts what they need to make to be able to support this task force, the government can't afford their salary, but hopefully through donations, Sentinel can. We have about 90 intel analysts on staff, whether it be volunteer, full-time, or part-time. We've got an army of intel analysts at our disposal. And we train them, we build them and equip them. We have an intel analyst training course. We prefer people to have intel analyst experience, and then they get to work. And then there's levels of, apprentice to, grandmaster, I guess you would call it, of being on the intel world. And, once they get out of that course, somebody's holding their hand. In these cases, we have law enforcement advisors making sure we follow the law. We're not breaking anyone's constitutional rights. We're doing this the right way. All right. We're not cowboys. Well, we all used to be cowboys, but we're not cowboys anymore. Right? Some of the guys get a little cowboy overseas, but still by, with, and through law enforcement. We don't break the laws of the country. We work with law enforcement. We work with our government, and we're doing everything we can to push the envelope within the confines of the law to save children. That's it. Save children from trafficking, children from exploitation, children from extortion. Now, and that's the issue. Since the federal government only wants to spend $42.2 million to keep our children safe, they played their card of where their priorities lie. The states have to do it. So my goal with Sentinel is to build out state-led task forces. I want to get the states the same technology, investigative methodology, talent, capability, software, and just tenacity that our federal government has the capability of doing. I want to give the states that same capability. I want to give the states the empowerment to keep their kids safe, keep our children safe, and not have to rely on the federal government. That because the federal government, there are so many good agents in the FBI and NHSI and everywhere else, but they also have to deal with the bureaucracy and the politics of the day and the agendas and the angles, right? And that's just a fact. That's not me trying to hate or talk shit about the federal government, but that's just the reality. And because of that, the federal government, in a lot of cases, HSI is probably the best agency I have seen when it comes to saving children first, right? And really putting an effort behind that. And I love the people at HSI. But what we're seeing is even with that, there's only a couple of them, right, for the entire state. And there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cases that need to be worked, right? And they're the only ones that have the technology and the top secret clearance and the ability to fight that. Tell me that's okay. That's not okay. So my goal is to give the states this ability and then support all of the local municipalities and counties and agencies throughout the state with our intel cell. And that's what we're about to launch in Florida. We're in talks in a bunch of other states. I don't want to say those names just because we're not there yet to say, hey, we're good to go. But we're good to go in Florida, at least according to DeSantis. He talked about in the press conference last week. So we're about to get to work down there. We've been working for months, just, how this task force would look, about the budget, the funding, get it submitted, get it proposed. But it is time to literally go to war for our children. Because if we don't fight this war now, we are going to lose. And this is where parents and people need to wake up. Why it's so important to start getting educated and aware so we can prevent this problem. Because if you're listening to this podcast and you live a good life and you're in the suburbs and your children are going to good schools or private schools, your child is just as much risk for this as the kid growing up in the ghetto whose parents left him. Just as much risk, because here's why. One, anyone can access our kids, and I guarantee you the child in the nice neighborhood has a lot more technology and a lot more untethered access to it. And I bet his parents are a lot busier and a lot less involved in his life, right? Well, here's the other issue. This is our country. So if 60, 70, 80% of our children are literally lost, then what kind of world are your kids that are protected and sheltered in the suburbs and in the private schools? What kind of world are they about to walk into? And people aren't thinking like that anymore. It is time for the people who have the means and the ability to step up, to get out of their bubble, to wake up from this lull that's in this country and realize what is happening to us. And if we all collectively as a society do not step up, do not take a stand, do not do whatever we can do in this fight for our kids in our sphere of influence and with our wallets and with our money and put it where our mouth is, then I don't give a damn how much money you put in the bank. I don't care about how much you're saving or how good your business is doing or what fund you got going for your kid's college or what university you want him to go to. This country is literally going to fall apart before any of that happens. Because that is the path that we are on. We are on a path of destruction with what is happening to our kids.
Yeah.
Because a destroyed child is a destroyed adult.
Yeah. When I was preparing for this discussion, I listened to some of your other recent appearances. One of the things that struck me is that there's a difference between this work that you're doing now, which is like the most obvious thing that we should be doing is preventing this. This is like monster type behavior. No one in their right mind is going to argue like, yeah, we should let this kind of activity continue. Right. But yet we've chosen, as you mentioned, to not really allocate a lot of damn resources to it, which is a crime. But it's in stark contrast maybe to your experiences in defending our country in the war on terror, where maybe it's not a clear of a moral question, some of the things that happened in that war. Just curious to get your take, because you sort of mentioned it in one of these appearances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, when I joined the military, I had a Toby Keith song playing in the background. God rest his soul, rest in peace, Toby. I saw the towers get attacked when I was in school, and man, it was a movement, right? Everybody in America came together behind New York City behind our troops, and we took the fight to them, right? At the time, I thought that was, what we were doing. And what I learned really quick is none of those people had anything to do with 9/11, right? And I learned that the war was about a lot more than 9/11. It was about oil, it was about global positioning, it was about resources, it was about testing weapons and technology and psychological warfare. It was really just about control and manipulation and seeing if this works. Right. I do know for a fact that we did not do the best things or not always the right things in those wars. Right. And there was a lot of things that I had to do or I was ordered to do as a person. I'm not going to get into that, but that weighs heavy on my heart and my conscience. I put so much effort into the military. I lost a marriage and lost being a dad to my older two daughters. I put so much effort into being the coolest guy, serving my country, doing all these things for everything else that I neglected my life, my personal life, and my family and what really mattered, right? And then I'm not even out of the military when I started Operation Lightshine, and that charity blew up almost overnight, and started going everywhere. I'm not even retired yet. I didn't even know I was getting retired when I started that charity. It was just during COVID, and I just lost my sister, and I was like, fuck it, let's go. I'm going to do something. And then that turned into a charity with task forces, partnered with law enforcement. Now they're expanding, across the country. It's amazing to see, and now I'm doing this with Sentinel. And, we've been able to rescue people all over the world, Afghanistan, Ukraine, other countries, Colombia, Uganda, all the amazing guys on the team. And now we've got stuff that we're doing here in the States to help people, and a task force about to launch, and hopefully we'll launch in every state we possibly can. I mean, and I put all my effort and all my energy into that. And to fix the person that got messed up by the military and from all the PTSD and things that you had to experience and weigh on the back of your mind that you don't even realize are really messing you up because you're so strong, you're so alpha, you're so cool. You don't really think about how bad those thoughts and who you are start to taint your perspective, your morals, your values, your personality, your anger, right? But I put everything into these charities, every ounce of me into these charities where I would hit like mental breakdowns and just shutdowns. And all I did was drink. Every second I wasn't working, I was drinking. Every second I wasn't working, I was drinking. Doing all kinds of things, partying, making horrible decisions, not being a good man. I was not being a good person to me and to others around me because I put all my energy into saving children and, and had a lot of damage from the military and, from losing my sister. So I finally got in with a group of good Christian men who weren't full of shit, who weren't just these guys that are, pretending to be Christians on Sunday and then going back to whatever they do the rest of the week. And they don't consider themselves Christians. A lot of them don't. They just follow Jesus. They just read the Bible, follow Jesus, right? And try to live like him, accept each other's mistakes and faults, but just try to make each other better. So anyways, man, that group, they I actually said the prayer and took Jesus into my heart, and life has started to change since then, man. I've become the husband that I need to be. Every day I'm working at being the husband I need to be still, the father I need to be, the follower of Jesus that I need to be, and then doing the things in my personal life, taking the time to work out again, to, really take care of my mental health, spiritual health, physical health, do some things that I enjoy too, get some hobbies back. And then fixing me and fixing all the shit that happened to me mentally and physically from the military and starting to work on that has only made me a better leader and better at what I do. And it's opened doors that I never thought would open, literally almost overnight. And so, man, it's just, it was a tough place for me for a long time, but I can't change the past. I can't change what happened, but I can also not succumb to and be a victim of the past. And I hope that message will resonate with other veterans is, it doesn't fucking matter anymore that they lied, right? Bitching about it, crying about it, being sad about it, depressed about it. It just destroys you. It just destroys you, and it destroys your future and everything you're capable of. So I hope other veterans listen to that and can just, do what they can to pull themselves out of whatever we had to do, whatever happened to us. whatever pain, whatever damage was inflicted, whatever the government did wrong, because blaming people does nothing. Trying to find out the truth when you will never know the truth, it does nothing good for you. All we can do is focus on us right now and changing the future, not letting something like that happen again. And I really hope that people really start to work on themselves internally, mental, physical, and spiritual health.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that and being willing to kind of be vulnerable and get into what must have been, sounds like a really challenging part of your life, a big part of your life. When you think about the work you do today and the violence that you were exposed to in those years in the war on terror, like they both sound, as someone who has no experience at all with that side of life, they both sound pretty difficult to process. Is one worse than the other, or is it really just the same? It's just darkness and it's hard to deal with.
No, well, it's different now, man. When I was in the military, I was the boots on the ground doing the work, in a lot of different ways. Now that I'm out, the dynamic has changed. Yes, do I hear about these cases and the intimate, horrible details? Do I get the messages? Am I working on things that are just absolutely tragic and a middleman, if you will, in a lot of that? Yeah. But starting a foundation and being a leader of one of the leaders of the foundation, and it really removes you from the day-to-day work that the law enforcement is doing, right? They're the heroes. I'm just their cheerleader, their number one fan, their supporter, and trying to get them the tools and resources that they need, right? And the support that they need. That's what I'm here for. Is being that in between, doing podcasts like this, talking to people who could potentially be donors, building I'm a visionary and an architect. That's what I'm good at. I built Lightshine. Lightshine took off. Came over to Sentinel. Now I'm trying to build this same thing at Sentinel. And you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses, right? My job for Sentinel to succeed is to build the environment that we can best support law enforcement here in the States. That's what I do. And I do that by raising money, creating these task forces, playing the political games, talking to all the people, dealing with all the lawyers and the nonsense, and getting the environment created so that our analysts, our law enforcement experts, and our technology, our software, and our training and our capabilities can then be partnered up with law enforcement, and we can give law enforcement every single thing that they need to save kids. Now, I will say this, man. We jokingly call Sentinel the veteran rehab program, because we got a lot of guys from the unit Delta Force, a lot of Green Berets, a lot of people from, in the intel side from different parts of the military that did intel. And, going back to what we talked about earlier, a lot of us question the things we had to do in the global war on terror. Now that we're starting to really realize the truth, that it was a banker's war, it was an oil war, and it was a test for capabilities and evil. And for things that I really believe are going to be potentially utilized against us if they aren't already. Right. And, we became awesome people. We got to do awesome things. Millions of dollars were spent on our training for us to become all that we became. We had to do a lot of evil shit with it. Right. And now, if you can tell a veteran that, hey, you can take, and there's only certain types of veterans we need, have had all that training and expertise, but if you can take these guys and say, hey, man, you can use all that and you can save a child. You can, pull a child out of hell. Like I'm telling you, man, it'll change your life. There is nothing more gratifying. And I'm saying this almost in a selfish way, but it's more spiritual or more moving than pulling a child out of hell. Yeah. Right. And giving that child a chance to do something else. And so I really think Sentinel's done more for the VA, for our special operations guys and myself, than drugs or therapy or counseling or a psychologist ever could. Right? Because guys, a lot of people just need purpose, man. And that's why I got in this fight. I took a tragic thing that happened in my life to my sister, lost my sister, took the pain from that and turned it into purpose. And because of that, I don't keep numbers, I don't count, and I never will. But I do know that thousands of people kids and people's lives have been changed since, in honor of my sister and since her death, because of the organizations, because of Light Shine and what I started, and then what I did in Afghanistan, what I did in Ukraine to rescue people, and then with other partners, of course. But, I didn't do that as the capacity of Light Shine. Just did that on my own. And now that I'm at Sentinel, we do all of that stuff in this organization: human trafficking, child exploitation, fighting child exploitation, extortion, and we do disaster and humanitarian response, because we have a team of uniquely qualified individuals who they did this for a living. So now they can do that. We can get into places nobody else can go. We can deliver aid in places no one else can get, and we can rescue people from places no one else can get. And that's a really unique capability to have inside of a foundation. And it's necessary because no one else is doing it.
You mentioned losing your sister, and I'm obviously sorry about that loss for you, and just wanted to ask you a question about it, because I think it's part of your story that people should know, and it sort of informs the work you do today in a material way. So I had heard in one of these other interviews discussing that you were sort of moments away from vigilante activity after you lost your sister. Like how close were you to that?
Oh, I mean, magazines loaded, guns ready to go, and the boys were coming with me. And
it's like your friends were ready to go. And
brother, guys in special operations, you mess with somebody's family, God rest your soul.
And what turned it around? Like, how did you guys stop in that heat of the moment?
My mom, it was a reminder that I needed, I've got two daughters. Well, three now, but at that time I had two daughters, and if I would have done something vigilante, it would have been illegal. Right. I know who killed my sister. And that's another thing that I've had to live with every day. I know the people involved. Almost every day, there's a part of me that wants to just go down there and send them to meet their maker, right? That's just, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, I just forgave them. And, every day I pray for strength to not, do something to those people, right? My mom just reminded me that if I did something, that, I wouldn't be able to raise my daughters, and they could end up in a worse situation, or raise or protect my daughters. They could end up in a worse situation than my sister. And so that's what stopped me. And then I turned that energy of vengeance, a lot of prayer, helping others, in her name. So it's, that's why, that's the motivation for me to, there's a lot of other things that I could be doing to make a lot more money and live a lot better life than I do, given my background and network and skill sets. But I just don't know how to stop doing this, man, and it's needed, it's necessary. And it seems like so few other people are willing to even wake up to how bad it is or care to how bad it is. But my sister, like so many other Americans, got bad on drugs. She came from an upper middle class family. Dad's a doctor, private schools, car when she turned 16, no worries. She had it happens to every level of society now. She got bad on pills, and next thing you know, pills turned into heroin and fentanyl. And, the worse the drugs get, the worse the people get, and we've been able to confirm through a lot of different sources, and a federal agency has picked up this investigation. It's just, so there's things that I can't say, but it's kind of going nowhere for a lot of reasons. But, we've been able to confirm that, she was trafficked to some extent to, once life has gotten so bad on drugs, and you lose your jobs, you're kicked out of your house, the worse the drugs get, the worse the drugs take hold, you lose your job, your ability to drive, charges. She had multiple mistakes at this point. The custody of her daughter, who was born during this horrible process, had to be taken by my parents. She's an amazing little girl who's doing great now. And, your life just falls apart. And that's what these guys that run these drug rings take advantage of. They take advantage of the girls and the men that get addicted to these drugs. And a lot of times the only way they have to pay for their drug habit is to get trafficked. And, so there's, we know that some things happened to my sister before she was disappeared, but a guy who sells drugs and had beaten her into a pulp, before she disappeared, she ended up she had no car, she couldn't drive, all this stuff going on. He ended up picking her up. We had on a Ring doorbell camera the day that she disappeared, and 30 minutes later, her cell phone never touched the tower again. He had an alibi that the cops, took, and she wasn't seen again until her body turned up in a river. So this was November 5th, 2019, when she was picking up by this guy. And then her body turned up in a river in another state on Christmas Eve, 2019. So I can't imagine, what that was like as a parent to go through, as a sibling. I know, it was hell for the whole family. And, we finally got closure because we knew the worst had happened, before her body was found. We just knew, but her body was found in a river in North Mississippi, Christmas Eve, 2019. And those events and all of that is what led me to start an organization called Operation Lightshine. I'm no longer a part of that. I turned it over to another foundation to run because when you're someone like me and once you build something that works, your job there is kind of done unless you want to be the CEO and just fundraise. I want to be driving the ball and pushing the mission forward and being as involved as I can. So anyways, I started to this past summer come over to Sentinel and keep the mission going. And it's taken that pain, turning it into purpose to fight for others. And then, most importantly, man, it is, it's in her honor.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, man. And I'm so sorry for your loss. And, part of me completely empathizes with the urge for vengeance. Like just try to put myself in that position. Mm-hmm. But I think you made the right choice and the work that you do today, you and your colleagues at Sentinel. And it sounds like some other organizations, like I'm so appreciative of all of you, and you served the country once and you're doing it again. And this sounds like really imperative work that people need to pay attention to. And I'm going to, try to do my part to spread the word about Sentinel, and I'll clue everybody in. But what can people do to help you?
Man, the biggest thing we need is just funding. We need money, man. This is a very expensive battle because we're building out the mechanisms and the support that law enforcement needs because they don't have the funding. So that's the reason it's a foundation, is that we can give them all this with funding, right? So there's a very wealthy family that supports Sentinel, and they pay everyone's salaries, right? They pay everyone's salaries, and they pay for all of our administrative costs themselves. It's I don't want to say their name because they don't want their out there for that. We have a lot of big foundations that support us substantially for the overseas fight, but now that we're building out the domestic fight, we need all the funding we can get, man. And that just is donations. Like, every donation goes towards the rescue of a child. It doesn't go in my pocket. It doesn't go to my paycheck. It goes towards the rescue of a child. So whether you can give $5 to $1 million, every dollar matters, man, because really where we're going to scale this and win is when Americans start to wake up and what's $5, $10, $15, $20 a month, right? To be able to just, put on a recurring thing and it's just gone. They didn't even think about it. Whatever someone can do to just set up a donation every month, every penny of that money is going to go to support the rescue of a child. And that's just the truth. So, the awesome part about it, man, is, we have the talent, we have the technology, we have all of that, but we can't scale that, and we can't continue this operation and bring more people into the fight and all this if we don't have the funding. Brother, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for the time, and let me just share this with your listeners and supporters. And I hope you have a great day, brother. Appreciate it.